So there's a second cognitive skill that also is graded based on the results section, and partially it's also graded based on the conclusion section. So this is one that's hybridized between both of them. But basically, it's interpreting the data to make valid claims. So both the conclusion section and the results section matters for this. But basically, in order to score a bare minimum 3, you have to make sure that your data is supported with evidence. And the claim has to be accurate. So you can't say something that doesn't match your data. So if you're saying your prediction was wrong, the data has to support that. If you're saying the prediction was not wrong, the data has to support that. And you have to give support for that, not just one piece of evidence. What are the pieces of evidence from my data, my table, my graph, my averages, my ratios, whatever math you did, throw it all in and explain in a paragraph how that actually satisfies the results, right? Now, that in itself is enough to get a 3. To get a 4, you have to explain why is it that your results may be limited. What are some of the things that make it less likely for you to trust your data? And even to get a 5, you can actually add a step further and say, this is how you could fix that on the next time you do an experiment like this. So suggest ways to actually address those limitations so that in future experiments you can trust your data more. So let's once again look at the exemplar and see how that looks like in real life. So when you get to the conclusion section, I actually have a whole section addressing limitations. For example, I say inconsistency in the measurements of the control or the control could possibly have skewed the data, making the results invalid. So I'm saying how exactly it's affecting my results. Possible errors could have occurred when you measured the amount of acid and base being added to the plants. Future experiments can actually use pipettes to dispense the liquids in a precise manner. Measurement of leads could also have been not done precisely. So maybe next time around, we can use a precise balance to measure the mass and an actual precise rate to actually measure the length. You could also look at other factors like leaf health or count that could also have mattered. And so I'm actually explaining ways in which I could have fixed my data. But not only that, in my evidence paragraph, I will cite specific evidence that supports my claim, right? So, and you start doing this in the results section, though, which is why I'm discussing it on this video. We'll talk more about this when we do the conclusion video next week. But how does that look like on the results section? Well, first of all, you have a good graph, you have a good table, right? But then when it comes to the results section, you actually have language that talks about your results. For example, here I'm saying it is clear that the rate of growth was faster for the normal pH. This pattern is also clear in the bar graph and in the graph showing the lines that is steeper. Another interesting pattern is that the alkaline plants grew better than the acid plants, but in fact, all the acid trials were worse than the alkaline conditions. The results indicate a clear relationship between pH and plant growth. So I'm not only listing the patterns, but saying how those patterns justify my prediction being wrong or right. And that's how it looks good in a good results section. Okay, so remember this week, the goal is to, going back over here, the goal is to complete a results section. All right, all you have to do that is grab these questions from the final product or the slides and paste them into your results section and replace the questions with the actual work and address what happened with the table and a graph and with words, identify patterns, do some math, either averages or ranges or ratios or percentages or all of the above to get a better grade, and then notice patterns of differences between the trials, and then what those differences or similarities tell you about your predictions. What does that mean? What does that say about what you said was going to happen or not, and the patterns that you were actually trying to examine? All of that makes for a good results section. And don't forget to turn it in and hit submit when you are done. Come to office hours or send me emails if you have questions about how to do any of this. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week, and don't do anything that would not make your mama proud.